what's your approach to all the many cultures you have met during your curatorial practice?
Very often, I would not stop thinking about what what kind of cultural background and this place has, but I would think about what kind of reality this place have, meaning um, at the end of the day, the more you encounter the real situation, the more you find out there's something really increasingly um, getting becoming similar, becoming uh, common, because we are living in a time that you can actually possibly travel from one place to another, but really in very similar kind of metropolitan context. And I think what we are working in, it's in a world that rather than divided or defined by um, um, a cultural difference based on geographic distance. Um, Rather than that, I think we are in a time that seeing in each society, each place, you can see the coexistence of many different level of cultures or many different cultural systems that come together. So that means in every place, actually, there is a multicultural situation. Mm-hmm. So for me, the most interesting question is how to live with this multicultural, um, multi-level of cultural difference, and this cultural difference actually very often turn up to be um, so real and that it would influence your behavior in everyday life, and also the way that you think about your work, um, and that systematically implies some kind of um, political relationship behind it, mm-hmm. I guess. So for me, um, um, the ultimate kind of motivation to encounter this complexity is to try to understand how in each place um, one can be as open, as tolerant, as generous as possible to allow all these different kind of cultures to be expressed in an equal way. Mm-hmm. So, in a way, my work is very much surrounding this effort. So, working as a curator in arts or working for a museum, um, fundamentally, it's really to think about how much contemporary creation can bring a voice to express this desire or this hope. And so I don't know if this is an answer to your question, but it's really what is behind all what I I think as the main motivation of all the efforts I make.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so basically, if I understand well what you're saying, to be a curator in a specific place means to be able to express a complexity.
Yeah.
Complexity of the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And especially to, on the one hand, through our work to allow the artist to express themselves in the most comprehensive kind of a possibility, mm-hmm. To create the conditions for artists to express themselves in the most, let's say, the best conditions possible, and also to create the spaces in which these expressions can be seen by everyone. And I think this is also very important. And somehow, the meaning of the significance of an exhibition is not simply um, it's not simply a kind of um, um, presenting the best artwork, but also it's a process in which everyone can have a possibility to participate in sharing the idea. Even very often, these ideas are very intellectually challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I truly believe because of the intellectual challenge that can be shared by people, that the society can actually move on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, how can we possibly bring complexity into a museum?
Well, how can I think a museum has a multiple functions, um, and by definition, a museum is a place where um, um, not only it's a place that represents some of the most interesting artworks um, in different periods of history, and for contemporary art museum, it's about now or the recent history, and it's not only a place where you um, preserve these products, but it's also a place where people can um, interact with um, this kind of cultural production of different um, periods in history and different all of today, let's say. And on the other hand, a museum more and more becomes a place where um, can be can become a very active site of production as well. So it becomes a place where um, not only artists use that as a kind of extension of of their studios,
Mm-hmm.
of the place they produce art, but also it becomes a kind of institution that um, um, research education, exchange with the public um, becomes increasingly a central mission. I think that makes a museum a very active actor in the making of a new social culture,
Mm-hmm.
and and that's I think an important tendency today when we look at museums, how much they um, they should become a really active part of the civil society.
Okay, so this is actually your idea of museum of the future.
Probably, yeah. It's now and in the future as well. On the other hand, the complexity is also a museum should continue to be a kind of a protectorate for cultural difference, for different kind of intellectually um, challenging ideas, products, projects, and so on. So I think a society needs institutions or organizations that can preserve the what we the cult, can preserve what is supposed to be experimental, what is supposed to be um, complicated, what is supposed to be controversial as well, as a very important part of the knowledge of today. It's a very important that a museum is able also to um, provide the conditions so this kind of um, intellectually complicated projects can exist.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we would go down the road of becoming simply a kind of entertainment industry.
Mm-hmm. MAXXI is the museum of the 21st century for art and architecture. I would like to know how do you articulate this contemporarity of this institution within a city which is so much influenced by the past.
Well, of course, the city influenced by the past is not a problem in itself, because this is exactly what makes this city different from many other cities in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be seen as advantage, and also in a way being closely related to history can also be a way to participate in making the contemporary. What you call the contemporary, it's not one thing. There's not one image. There should be, again, a diversity. It should be, and 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 being close to history could be an element very important in terms of contributing to the making of this contemporary landscape, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the question is how much the contemporary um, how to say it. I would say how much the contemporary should not be simply understood as one kind of thing, but they should be understood as a dynamic system that continues to evolve, and the risk of being too close to history is can kind of sometimes make you feel there would be less necessity to change.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, maybe it could become a problem. So how to turn this relationship with the past, with the history, into a again a possibility of creating the new, and this is an interesting challenge for us to think. But I think a museum like the MAXXI, the main question is not this. The main question is actually to bring the institution back to the social political reality,
mm-hmm.
rather than being entangled in a question of aesthetic canon,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think that the most important thing for a museum like the MAXXI is how to continue to invent new relationship between contemporary art creation, architectural ideas, projects, and the changing reality. And this changing reality has many aspects. Of course, the city, how it changes, the cultural identity of the place, how it changes, and also, we need to put it into a kind of a global perspective to understand this change.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why it's so important that we should be open to different kind of contemporary forms of creation in the world. It's not simply following one line of one narrative of art history or architectural history, and then of course we are inevitably confronting with a lot of questions from social to ecological, environmental, individual, and so on. And these are actually topics for us. So this is why I propose, the museum to look at how to engage with some very important questions, such as the question of the crisis of democracy, how to find a solution, different proposals to reconnect the creation, artistic creation, and the possibility of sharing with people, and how to make the museum into a laboratory of proposing solutions for certain cultural and political questions in the society today. I feel that it's necessary to redefine our relationship with this changing world, starting from our relationship with our neighbors, how some originally established concepts, definitions have to change. For example, the idea of Europe, who is European, why Europe, what is actually Europe. If we don't really look at these aspects in the perspective of a important connection with the Mediterranean, with other parts of the world, and Europe can no longer stand actually. So all the crises we are facing today, it's somehow related to, because of the fact that this new perspective is not yet being taken in consideration in the social projects, in political and economic actions, and also culturally we are somehow too limited into certain kind of tradition. I think that's a very interesting moment. So this is why I proposed that we should work on exploring this relationship between Europe and the Mediterranean regions.
How do you want to explore this issue?
So for example, we have a series of how to say exhibition programs and other programs that present artists from this region, and not only presenting them as it is, but also to look at the relationship, the interactions between the two sides. So we started a series of exhibitions, major exhibitions. With a few months ago, we have an exhibition on Iran contemporary, and we are now working on Istanbul, and probably soon we are working on Beirut, and then we are also working with different individual artists and filmmakers and so on. So, for example, we would probably organize a larger project with the filmmaker Amos Kitai for next year and so on. So,
what is urgent now, in your opinion, like in one word?
This is,
I know.
What is urgent now? This is a very interesting question. I think what is urgent is action. It's this action. It's not simply to be very, very active and so on, but also with a real cultural project. What is I think at the end it's urgent to think and act on defining a certain perspective for the world. I think we are in a time that all the events happening around us completely surpassed our capacity of perception. And then how to rethink a a project for the world, it becomes totally impossible. So I think it's urgent to act on, how to rethink this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
First question suggested by Hans Ulrich Obrist is, tell me about the archive of cities on the move.
Well, the archive of cities on the move, we have all the communication with the artists and the projects, and we have the slides, we have a lot of books and so on, and most of the materials now are in Hong Kong with the Asian Archive, who are scanning them. So I'm waiting for them to finish the work, and then they would return me the originals. Yeah, so that's the situation.
Okay. How did you develop the archive? What's in it particularly?
Well, I think for the moment we just try to keep it organized, and then maybe in the future people would, some people would look at that and do research and so on. Archive is archive, so it's like we keep them there and people can continue to use it. Yes, I don't know what concretely. I think probably we are going to make a book soon, within the next year or something, hopefully. Yeah,
This is
maybe there'll be a possibility to work with. After all, they are doing this series of books on major exhibitions. So maybe we will be, because I have been invited to give a talk lately in London about cities on the move. Yes.
So this is the unrealized book you was talking about.
Unrealized book is this one. I think probably it's not done yet. I mean, it's not done yet anyway. So probably we would have a chance to really to revisit the cities on the move, because cities on the move has been was a project that traveled to 7 places in the world. So there are many materials. There's never been a kind of a summary of this project. But in the meantime, this project is really, I think, it's really very special, very innovative at the time, and I think even today it's impossible to repeat the same exercise because of the particular momentum, the conditions, and so on, and because it's not one expression. It's just 1 minute, 2 minutes. So it's not simply an expression that tours to different places, but every time it's a reinvention of a new project. So this is like an ongoing laboratory of urban creation.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.